Hi, Megan.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing?
I'm well.
Good. Glad to have you with us. Let me introduce us. I'm Robert Wright, publisher of the Non-Zero newsletter on the Substack platform. This is the Non-Zero podcast, and you are Megan Daum or Megan Daum, as the case may be. We'll discuss that.
Yeah.
And you are founder and CEO of what I call the Meghan-industrial complex,
Oh,
which consists of no less than, first of all, 2 podcasts, right? So
yes.
the Unspeakable, longstanding podcast, a newer podcast that's co-hosted called A Special Place in Hell. And this is the thing that intrigues me, the third leg of the complex, this thing called the Unspeakeasy, which,
Yes.
so far as I can tell, correct me if I've got this wrong, is a cult for anti-woke women. Is that fair?
Oh, cult.
No, you think I'm going too far?
It's more of a church.
It's more like a, okay, but a house of worship.
Yeah.
And
a house of worship of me, of yours truly. Yeah.
Worship. Yeah.
No. It's a community.
Okay.
Everything's a community now, Bob. Yeah.
But you have retreats, right? Women can sign up for them, but not men. Can men not sign up for them? Is that?
They can't sign up for the retreats, although I'm building it out because I want to grow and we want to have offerings. We have co-ed offerings, as they say. But yeah, no, right now we have retreats for women. We have an online community, which is amazing. And there's a lot going on in the online community. And yeah, it's fantastic. I can tell you all about it. But it's very interesting that you say there's 3 legs of the
Did I miss a leg? I mean, it's growing so fast.
I feel like
I hesitate to characterize it.
It's a centipede. This is the problem with the creator economy. There's too many things. You got to feed the beast. I mean, I am a writer. Do we remember that? I mean, I have to remind myself yes, I actually am a writer and I do write stuff on occasion and I'll put it on my Substack. And
wait, what is the Substack? What is the Substack called? Is that called the Unspeakable?
It's at Meghan.substack.com. And that's where you can that's where you can support the Unspeakable podcast. So all of my stuff, as they say in the business world, the single source of truth is on the Substack. So if I write stuff, I put it there. I also teach. I teach writing a lot, actually. So that's another leg. And what else?
So wait, you just have your own classes. People email you at the newsletter or something and you say, never end a sentence with a preposition or whatever, and they send you money.
Yeah, I do. I'm like a walking Grammarly. I'm like a Grammarly if you want to pay a little more.
Better hurry. The AI is whatever you're doing, the AI is catching up with you.
I know. No, I teach writing classes. I teach nonfiction narrative writing. So I do it. I used to do them in my apartment. I mean, and actually this is what led me to the Unspeakeasy. But I mean, if I can tell you more about that in a minute. But yes, I'm just trying to think of all the things I do. So 2 podcasts, writing, teach writing. I do that on Zoom generally. And yeah, they come. I have a lot of repeat students and people have taken the class many times. And they get published, actually. It actually works.
Now, if they only get published in your newsletter, that's cheating. You realize that, right?
No, they get published in real places.
Not that your newsletter isn't a real place.
It's not. It isn't a real place. It's not a newsletter. That's the thing is I think that I don't have the bandwidth to write a newsletter every day. I was a columnist. I was a newspaper columnist for like 12 years.
For the Los Angeles Times, right?
Yes. And I had to have an opinion every week. And I'm convinced that a lot of our sort of cultural discourse problems would go away if you didn't have so many people who were forced to come up with an opinion on a regular schedule. There's nothing worse.
Didn't you formally swear off of having takes? How did that work out?
Well, I haven't really had a take. I mean, I will verbally have a take. I'm not going to write them down. I don't know what it is. I mean, do you find this? I find it almost like physically excruciating to write certain kinds of things. Like the show notes for my podcast, it's like painful. So I don't know what that is.
No, I know that takes. I feel less driven to have them as I get older, but I think that's just a sign of age. It's like there's this part of your life where you want to show off on Twitter, and then this part where you don't give a shit. I'm in that part.
Oh, you think it's age?
I think, no, I'm just speaking
no,
in my own
I
case.
I think everything is age. That's so interesting because there are people I watch and, they're like in their 30s or maybe early 40s, and I just see them and they're just on fire. I mean, really good ones, like people really at the peak, they're just cranking it out and they're doing so in a really thoughtful way. And I think, I remember when I was kind of like that.
Yeah.
And I just either don't have the interest or the energy to do it anymore.
Yeah. Well, I'm older. This probably doesn't apply to you. Don't worry, you're fine. Here's one thing. This woke thing I brought up. I want to spend some time on the woke thing in this conversation because I mean, you have views on wokeness, right? It's
I don't like to use that word, but we can't think of a better one. So
yeah. Yes. Well, we can search for one if you want, but I do want to explore your not entirely favorable attitude toward the phenomenon that goes under the name wokeness, which will maybe will involve retracing some of your career. You've had a journey toward being CEO of the Meghan-industrial complex, which is not entirely favorably disposed toward wokeness.
We have merch also. Merch.
Wait, that says problematic. Problematic. Is that another of your brands?
Yes, I have 2 merch items. You're familiar with this item.
Nuanced AF. I always thought was a good. Yeah. You came up with that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You're like a genius. I want to take guidance from you. How much does it cost? Well, I frankly, I already think my writing's not all that bad. But do you give classes in like how to start an industrial complex? How to
should.
You should.
I should. No, it's hilarious that I do this. I mean, we've all become merch sellers now. But yeah, I have the Nuanced AF merch, and I also, the Unspeakeasy has its own merch line, Problematic.
So, it's funny. In the Non-Zero newsletter that goes out on Friday, which is the day this is going to air, we are going to unveil our Non-Zero merch. It's funny you should say this. So as soon as
Mickey leaves, you get merch?
Well, Mickey was always funny. We should talk about me. Let me finish laying out what I hope will be the scope of this conversation. I want to talk about the wokeness thing. There's a kind of connection to some recent events. I've been listening to your podcast, both of them. And there's a couple of things. There's a whole TED Talk controversy. Has TED been overtaken by wokeness? There's the Israel-Hamas thing, actually. You said, if I've got you right on your podcast, that you think the way some of the left has reacted to the Israel-Hamas thing, especially this kind of infamous letter at Harvard and so on that some people may be familiar with, could spell the end of wokeness. I think you said something like the last gasp of wokeness. People can check me if they doubt that, or
something like that.
Something like that on your special place in hell podcast. So I want to talk about that and the whole way. I mean, there has been this intersection of wokeness and anti-wokeness with that issue. And then finally, not totally unrelatedly, I want to ask you whether there aren't some people in the kind of generally anti-woke community who are not as consistently principled as they might have it. I'm not going to name names.
That's a nice way of putting it.
I'm not going to name names with the possible exception of Barry Weiss. But whether they're really consistent in their opposition to the suppression, the kind of informal suppression of speech, and whether they don't, in fact, participate in the informal suppression of speech when it's speech that they are ideologically opposed to. But who knows whether, I think we'll get to that, but we have a long journey ahead. But let's get back to Mickey, because you were, in the entire history of the Parrot Room, which went on for, since early 2020, somebody else could do the math. We started as a pandemic thing. I mean, it was both a public podcast on Fridays, and then there was the Parrot Room in Patreon, the paywall thing. And then Mickey had to go do important things, and so this is sadly come to an end. Although he'll show up every once in a while. But we only had 2 guests in the Parrot Room Mickey and I, in the entire history of it. There was one week he was gone, and I had two old friends from my newspaper days, but you were one of the two guests. I mean, how honored do you?
Oh, I'm totally honored. I had no idea.
Are you honored and humbled, or just honored?
I am. Well, I'm always humbled.
Okay.
I'm stunned and humbled.
It's quite a tribute.
Yeah,
I have to say.
I'm honored and stunned. Yeah, I don't remember what we talked about even, but I'm sure.
I would guess that wokeness came up. Anyway, we pay tribute to Mickey.
That makes it sound like he's dead. I was supposed to have coffee with him yesterday, but
he didn't show. Well, then maybe he is. Oh, he's sick.
Well,
see, I'm not keeping up with him as well as
I mean, I don't want to tell tales out of school.
No, he'll be fine. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
So woke. What is the phenomenon that you don't think woke is quite the right word for?
Well, I mean, woke has been culturally appropriated from the civil rights movement. I mean, how far back do you want to go? I don't like woke because it's used by this sort of reactionary corner of the kind of right wing, or sort of alt right adjacent. It's a shorthand for making fun of what we used to call PC, you know. And to me, look, I like it's a great word because it rolls off the tongue nicely. It's got nice consonant sound. It rhymes with stuff. Like, it's a great word in and of itself, but I don't like the way it's used in a sort of glib way by sort of, Matt Walsh crowd. And so I try not to use it. It's hard to avoid it.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, let's just, there are so many layers of this. I mean, this has to do with the way that kind of decolonization, intersectional ideology has infiltrated every corner of the culture and every aspect, not only of the academia, but just kind of media and thought itself. And in some way, that started off as a good idea. I think I'm not of the belief that this was some kind of conspiracy. I think that a lot of stuff happened at once, and you end up with a whole bunch of people who have some very contorted ideas about justice, and sort of apply it in this kind of meme-based, performative way. And I guess that would, and often, and there's a lot of bullying and silencing and what we are now calling cancel culture going along with that. So that, to me, is the sort of woke umbrella.
So the idea of justice, the warping of the idea of justice, has to do with kind of the role of ethnic identity and gender identity and so on, as the prism through which issues of justice are mediated, or what?
Yeah, it's the inverted hierarchy, right? So the idea being that everything is about power. And so if you are white, you are automatically in power. If you are male, you automatically have power. So everything is viewed through the lens of who has power and who doesn't, and it stops there. And that is, that's obviously what we're seeing now with the Free Palestine crowd not able to separate their cause with Hamas. Israel is seen as the white oppressor just by virtue of being white. There's like a total lack of nuance. I mean, that's why my motto is nuanced AF. I think that people started to get really sick of that several years ago, but it prevails.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how pervasively what you call the Free Palestine crowd is connected to the crowd that either applauded or failed to condemn the atrocities perpetrated by Hamas. And maybe one way of getting at that is, like you said, with wokeness, it's all about power. Well, with the traditional left, it's all about power, but that's a class-based view of the situation where kind of lower class transcends, in a way, ethnic and gender. It's inclusive of all people who, in the traditional leftist view, lower class is the oppressed class, by which they mainly mean lower economic class.
Right.
And it will include some white people and some men and some women and some gay people, and some black people, but not all of the above. And so, and that's I think, hey, power is important. That's why they call it power. But you see,
yeah, no, that's the old leftism. That's
right?
over
Does that
now.
not?
I think,
does that bother you less?
no, yeah. I mean, it makes more sense. I understand the logic of it, but unfortunately, this has been misapplied. I think, and it's funny because even if I know it's hard for people to believe, but I really have resisted the temptation to think say all of the college students are like this. All of the media is like this. Everyone has been captured. This is terrible. The institutions are, rotting from the inside. I've tried not to be hyperbolic about it. And I've also, up until recently, said things like this is mostly a phenomenon of elite institutions and humanities departments specifically. I have to say that I can't say that anymore. I hear from more people in engineering departments of state schools saying that they can't even get the curriculum passed because of all these bizarre strictures and hurdles to jump over, and it's really shocking and strange.
The so you've reached the point where you are saying all the things you tried not to say for so long.
I mean, I have reached the point, although it's funny because my podcast partner, Sarah Hayter, so we do this podcast called The Special Place in Hell, which is named after Madeleine Albright's quote.
And it's not Hater, we should say. It's what, HAID?
It's HAI, Sarah Hayter, HAIDER. Yeah. So Sarah is, she was born in Pakistan. She was an immigrant. She was very active and prominent in the new atheist community. She's very young. She's like a wunderkind. She started something called Ex-Muslims of North America. Anyway, we can talk about her in a second. But we have this podcast called A Special Place in Hell, named after the Madeleine Albright quote. There's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. We originally started, we've talked a lot about Me Too and, these kinds of issues.
And by the way, is that ironic, the reference to that Madeleine Albright quote? Because I would think what she said is kind of a woke thing to say, right?
Yeah, well, it's a very silly thing to say because it's sort of, again, it's one of these things that assumes that all women are morally,
Okay.
by virtue of being a woman, that you are morally superior and virtuous. So, no, but Sarah really is a catastrophist about this. Like, she really thinks that there's no going back, that the institutions are over, any kind of university education effectively has no value. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I don't think I'm exaggerating. And I'm always the one who's saying that's not true. It wasn't that long ago that Enlightenment values were absolute baseline and what everybody sort of agreed upon. I think that this will correct. I 75% think that. But
well,
far be it
for me to correct your interpretation of your own views, but in some of your podcasts, it sounds like you're even more optimistic than that. It's like we've turned the corner, not just that this will ultimately resolve itself. I mean, the most dramatic is that thing where you said this is the last gasp of wokeism.
Yeah, I said that the other day.
Now maybe that was in the heat of the moment.
That
I
was
don't know.
48 hours ago.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So things change.
Look, I think the past 2 weeks. So we're October 19th now. The attacks in Israel happened on the 7th. It feels to me like an inflection point. It seems like a lot of liberals who either weren't paying attention or just were dismissing the campus craziness as anomalous, and something that just people on podcasts were getting hysterical about. I don't see how they can turn away now. I'm shocked. I mean, the level of anti-Semitism has frankly shocked me, and I was naive.
What is the evidence that it's actually widespread among? I mean, let me read you a tweet I just read from Michael Shermer, who's I think he was officially part of the intellectual dark web. I know him. He's been on my podcast.
He was part of the. Wasn't he? He was one of the. Was he one of the horsemen of the atheist apocalypse or something? Maybe not.
No, he was not quite, but he was very friendly with them.
Yeah.
Not one of the four horsemen of the so he founded this magazine, The Skeptic.
Yeah, he's been on my podcast
to debunk things. Yeah. He tweeted, "Let current events be a wake-up call to liberals that many progressive leftists are not only illiberal, but are Jew-hating anti-Semites whose identity politics leads them to embrace murder, torture, rape, and violence in the name of ignoble ideological causes denounced in public." I'm wondering, like, how many people can we confidently say that about? And one reason I say that is because I've seen people, like on Twitter, post signs of people marching under Palestinian flags and then inferring that they like support Hamas or something. And like, well, Hamas is like, bitter rivals, Fatah in the West Bank. They march under Palestinian flag. They want Palestinians to have the vote. They want Palestinians to have due process of law and basic fundamental rights that they don't have. And it just seems to me, I'm sure you could find cases where woke people seem to you to be guilty of overgeneralizing. And I think it's almost the plague of our time, overgeneralizing generally about what groups of people feel. So, I mean, we can talk about the Harvard letter if you want, but like how much evidence do we have that large numbers of people are literally like anti-Semitic? And what did he say? Jew-hating anti-Semites. I mean, who are we talking about here?
Well, that's a good question. I guess we have to start by asking, like, who are these people, and are they able to separate Palestine, the people of Gaza, and the Palestine cause from Hamas, which is a death cult, and yelling, shouting, from the river to the sea. My understanding is that that's always been associated with extermination of Jews. Am I wrong? I may be. This is not my wheelhouse at all.
I was thinking I apparently need to research the historical origins of that term, because I would assume that at least some people, there is broadly an important part of the context is people have given up on the two-state solution. I think appropriately. Not going to happen. And we could get into why, but not going to happen. And so now people talk about a one-state solution that they would say could begin with Israel giving the vote to people who currently it does rule, but doesn't allow to vote because of their ethnicity. That is to say, at least West Bank Palestinians. And then the idea is it would be a unified political entity. Just make it a unified political entity from the river to the sea. Let everybody vote. That is one intelligible rendering of the phrase from the river to the sea. But you may be right. I really don't know with the historic, but I would bet that a lot of people some people use the term and are accused because of that of being anti-Semites also don't know what the historical resonance is. And maybe using it the way I said, which is that they want what's called a one-state solution. Everybody gets political rights. But I don't know. I haven't done the research.
I think the fact that the image of the paraglider descending into a crowd of people, and we know what happened. The idea that
well, but wait. I have to say, it's far from the case that everyone who has used the phrase "from the river to the sea" has used that meme.
I'm talking about this is a different example. I think this is a better example. Yeah, the river to the sea. Let's put that aside for a second. This is a better example. I mean, so Black Lives Matter, BLM Chicago, to be clear, they tweeted an image of what has now become inscribed, like the image of were they paraglide? What are we calling them? Paragliders? They had like motorized bicycles, whatever it is. This parachute coming in. I mean, it's a haunting, horrific image, and it has now been co-opted. It's the Che Guevara T-shirt of the moment, and I think that the majority of people who are using that have no idea of the implications. I mean, I think you might be right, like in terms of like the masses in the West, are they anti-Semitic? I don't think so. Not people who, I mean, depending on who we're talking about and where. But the problem to me is that you've got these generations of people now, young people, probably anybody under 35, who, I'm not exaggerating, have grown up and been educated under this kind of pedagogy that is completely rooted in this intersectional theory. And I know I sound like some kind of, like, you know, Chris Rufo hysteric, and I want to be really careful about the way we talk about this, but the more and more I see it, it is absolutely true.
Yeah. Okay, but I mean, I'd say a couple of things. So this one chapter of BLM did this thing that I think was a really bad idea. I have mainly seen it not brandished by people who support it, but by people who are pointing out that this one chapter of BLM put it out there.
No, I've seen it a lot. I've seen it.
But people proudly saying this represents my views?
Because I don't think they don't know. I mean, I think they think it's like a nice picture.
Yeah.
Like, it is kind of like artful. It has, I mean, it's like a nice drawing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very useful as a symbol.
It could be. So anyway, I mean, I have one question about how widespread. I mean, you know, the Harvard letter, which I just glanced at it, but starting off by saying Israel is solely responsible is not my idea of a good way to start a letter about what happened. But anyway, so this was an extreme or extremist letter or whatever. It was put out under the letterhead of several groups, and then some of the people in some of the groups said, I didn't know about this. Some of the groups actually took their names off of it. So, I mean, there's the BLM Chicago meme. I'm awaiting the evidence that, you know, anti-Semitism per se is this widespread thing on the left. I don't know. But the main thing I want to ask is, you're connecting the intersectionality to support for Palestinian liberation. And I just want to say there's a whole separate basis of support for it in America on the traditional left, which is not intersectionalist, some of whose prominent people like Glenn Greenwald seem to be pretty anti-woke, right?
Yeah.
And very anti-cancel culture. I think he would agree with you on a lot of things. He's traditionally been very what is being called pro-Palestinian. I think I'm pro-Palestinian. They're being denied basic rights, and they shouldn't be. And I admit it's a nettlesome problem, and I understand why people in Israel are, even before this last thing happened, didn't feel it was an easy problem to solve, especially like in the wake of the second Intifada. I understand all that. I understand all that. But I am pro-Palestinian and and I support them gaining their freedom, which on the West Bank they don't have, and there's a different sense in which they don't have it in Gaza. But I just want to say, like, and I guess I'm a third kind of thing because I'm not that far left. But anyway, to act as if the only way you get to a view that's supportive of Palestinian aspirations is to be some kind of intersectionalist woke maniac, I just think is not factually correct. I think it's true that the modern left, much more than the old left, does have the wokest, whatever you want to call it, element. So there's more of the intersection of that with, I don't know, pro-Palestinian, whatever you want to call it. But it's far from inherent, and that's, I guess, why I wonder, you're far from the only one who's saying kind of, okay, now the woke have gone too far or something. I mean, I guess it's an interesting question. I mean, maybe you're right that the people, the subset of the kind of pro-Palestinian people who are being so seemingly heartless and reckless in their language do tend to be woke. That's an interesting empirical question. But I still argue against conflating support for the Palestinian cause with wokeism or with anti-Semitism or with various other things in that.
Right.
mix.
But the problem is that the demonstrations that we're seeing are people who are conflating support for the Palestinian cause with support for a terrorist organization. They're not able to separate it out for some reason. And
I don't think that's true. What about the Jewish groups that were occupying the Capitol?
It's still, well, but but those were Jewish groups. Those were also, I thought those were pro-Palestinian groups. In the Capitol the other day?
That's my point. That's my point.
But I mean, but do you see the magnitude of the demonstrations in major cities? I mean, in New York City, in Washington Square, you've got people yelling actual anti-Semitic chants are happening in New York City. And I think it is young people. My guess, it is young people who really don't have any idea what they're saying. They have grown up under a framework that is telling them that the people who are in power and people who are white and Israelis are powerful and white, as far as we're concerned now. It wasn't too long ago when Jews were not considered white. As far as they're concerned, it's white, powerful people bad, and brown, less powerful people good under any circumstances. It's been so oversimplified. And that's what I think everyone's objecting to. It's also, it has been 2 weeks. And I mean, absolutely horrific atrocities. And they can't take 5 minutes before they erupt into this. It's astonishing to see.
Well, I mean, again, the people who said the highly ill-advised things, right out of the gate, I'm not defending them at all. I'm asking how large a portion of this they represent. And I'd say a similar thing about, the marches. I mean, again, to act as if marches featuring Palestinian flags are inherently anti-Semitic, I'm sorry, just illustrates a really profound lack of understanding of the whole history of this thing, I think. But I would also say that I don't doubt that you can get footage from some of these marches of people saying, or even beginning to chant anti-Semitic things. But I would say, I mean, let me back up and say that I think about the way I've reacted to the whole Trump thing, because it's related. Few people surpass me in their loathing of Donald Trump. But from the beginning, I have argued against the way the resistance would take, some racist thing said by some Trumpist and say, so all of them are racist and all of them are, and I oppose this kind of thing generally. And now I'm opposing it in this context. And again, I haven't done all the research. Maybe I'm naive, and there's a lot more anti-Semitism in the movement than I realize. But the speed with which people are inferring that support for Palestine is anti-Semitic, I find disconcerting. I'd say, just before I let you talk, I want to say one more thing about, like, when you say the speed, can't we have kind of a decent interval? There are people, and this is what motivated the, I think, mainly Jewish groups. There were a number of rabbis sitting in the Capitol who is that, time, they feel time is of the essence. Israel is mounting a massively lethal retaliation, the death toll of which has already far exceeded, apparently, what was, again, horrifically visited upon Israel. And they're worried that, well, by Israel's own account, this is just the beginning. And they feel that Israel is, in systematically, although some of this has been, I guess, altered under American intervention or something, systematically denying, water, food, electricity, or shutting off their supply of it to 2 million Palestinians who didn't plan the attack or participate in it. And these people worry that this thing is getting out of hand and it could lead to regional war and is unjust in any event.
That train has left the station. That's inevitable at this point. Yeah.
What, regional war? Well,
yeah, I would say so. Okay. Well, anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm not sure, but my point is, they're like, I'm sorry, we can't keep quiet about what we consider an unjustified and unwise Israeli response to this. Okay, that's their view. It could be wrong, but if you ask, well, can't you respect like a 1 month period of mourning or something? Their answer is, I think, logically enough, no. This thing is getting out of hand, and it'll get more out of hand if we all enforce some kind of deference to whatever Bibi Netanyahu says, because it's considered impolite to do otherwise.
Okay, well, if that is their message and they are as coherent and detailed as how you just put it, I think that's one thing. The problem is that we have college presidents who are making either no statement or mealy-mouthed, weasel-worded statements. We have leaders of major institutions saying nothing. We have people like AOC saying whatever nonsense she's saying. To your example about the crazy Trumper who says something racist and the left blows it out of proportion. I think often the left did blow that out of proportion, but the difference is that's one rando. We're talking about Harvard. That's not the same thing. The problem is that whatever we're calling woke, that has won the day. The left won the culture war. And so whatever this is setting the tone. I mean, that's the difference.
Well, but when you've got whole groups taking their names off of the letter at Harvard, and you yourself, again, seem to think that this has been some kind of like the woke, they've kind of overplayed their hand and this is going to be bad for them. I mean, I'm not sure of that. I mean, again, it just, I'm just against overgeneralization, and I encourage, especially when
You'll
it's
never
pejorative.
make it in this town, Bob, if you're against overgeneralization.
I mean, I'm sure I do it sometimes, but yeah, I guess I've kind of said my thing. And on that, but you can.
I mean, I was just before we signed on, there was some footage going around. I mean, obviously it's Twitter, who knows, but there was a high school in San Francisco. These kids are running through the halls, yelling from the river to the sea, free Palestine. I mean, it's like, I cannot imagine what it's like to be a Jewish kid in that kind of situation now. I mean, I've been hearing for years stories about what it's like to be Jewish on a college campus. People take Islamic studies courses, which everybody should take. They're fascinating. Of course, you should take that. But the behavior of some professors to Jewish kids, all in the name of like punching up, it's pretty jaw-dropping. And admittedly, I was not aware of the extent of it.
Okay, but I would say, like, again, social media has, I just think, just warped our view of the world, because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of high schools in America. It is guaranteed that if in a single high school, smartphones are pervasive, everything gets captured on video. It is guaranteed that if in a single high school, any number of students runs through the halls saying from the river to the sea, you'll see it on Twitter. And you know what that means that you saw it? It means that like about 12 students did that. Okay. And
I just more than 12. It was definitely more.
Right,
I mean,
but it was one high school.
Okay. But here's the other thing. You're right that it's probably
you
not
want
happening.
Me to read, you want me to read some things? You want me to read something Sarah Silverman just said on Twitter, which I find abhorrent?
I thought, oh no, go ahead. I liked what she said. But she took it down, apparently. I was surprised that she spoke out. What did she say?
Now she may have been quoting somebody else, but maybe this is her, but she's doing it approvingly. Anyway, she embraced this. Many are saying that it's inhumane that Israel is cutting off water, electricity to Gaza. So first of all, I mean, she's fine with that. It's pretty clearly
Israel's not their only water and electricity source, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, but but it's an important one, and Gaza is chronically in need of these things. Clean water was a problem to begin with. Power was a problem to begin with. And you've got the defense minister of Israel saying, we're going to cut this off. They're animals. Now,
well, they're also saying we're going to cut it off unless you release the hostages. I mean, that's my understanding was that this was a negotiated.
That's collective punishment.
Okay, what did Sarah Silverman? Okay,
these are war crimes. These are war crimes.
Well, what else was a war crime? Okay, what did Sarah Silverman say?
Okay, but fine. Are war crimes fine on one side and not the other? I mean, I condemn them both.
I don't think cutting off electricity is the same as
water.
What was done. I'm not even going to repeat it. Come on. That's not the same, especially when this is not their sole source of electricity. They do have some infrastructure. Anyway, I thought Sarah Silverman did speak out on behalf of Israel, which I was surprised to see. Although my understanding is that she said she was stoned and she's since deleted it. So I don't know. Look, I am not. I am not an expert in this area. I don't want to get into this because it's too much. Because I'm speaking only based on what I have read and listened to the last 2 weeks. So, but okay. I just don't. The difference between I understand that you could say these demonstrations are not happening in Texas and in Kansas. It's happening in New York and Boston, San Francisco. The thing is that the kids that are going to school in San Francisco and New York and Boston then come in and they work at the New York Times and they work for media organizations and in the institutions, and they are setting the cultural tone. And that's the difference. Look at what the New York Times was doing yesterday with these headlines about the hospital blast. I mean, astonishing. That was just an amazing, like psyop on the front page of the New York Times.
Let me, before you elaborate, let me say on the war crimes issue, like, I'm not an expert. People should look at the podcast conversation I had with Sarah Leowitzen, who used to be head of the Middle East for Human Rights Watch. We talked about all this stuff. It is somewhat nuanced, but there are certainly prominent voices in the realm of international law who are saying, like, the combination of this form of and telling Palestinians to leave an area, they're saying that or they will risk dying is forced relocation. There are various. I do not purport to be making any firm assertions about what is and isn't a violation of international law, but people can refer to resources, including that conversation. Yeah, on the headline I saw was hundreds killed in Israeli attack on hospital, Palestinians say, or something. I mean, it was attributed, which is what you do with a breaking news story.
Okay, but then there was like a series of stealth edits. I mean, my understanding, the New York Times seems to be getting its information from like Gaza sources. I just don't like the Gaza Health whatever collective. I can't remember the name of it. I just can't. I don't know. I'm not in the newsroom of the New York Times. I don't know what's going on. I think, nobody does. Fog of war. Okay.
Right.
I think that we should take a step back, but I don't know. I in no way, no one who knows me would say, oh, she's some kind of the hawk for Israel at all. But over the last 2 weeks, I just am absolutely shocked at the lack of shock and outrage from a lot of people. I mean, Hamas has stated clearly that they want to get rid of Jews. They want to get rid of Israel and they want to get rid of Jews. That is the agenda of so many of these organizations. So why are we pretending that somehow, oh, well, they're not, it's not really, it's just it's not fair that being represented by this group.
I can't vouch for whether they've officially said they want to get rid of Jews. You hear that. I do think they've said they want to eliminate the Zionist state or whatever.
I think it's part of their, stated
probably
doctrine. I don't know. I don't have it in front of me.
Have probably some prominent members have said it or something. I don't deny that. So yeah, anyway, I guess my position is clear. I guard against overgeneralizing, and I hate to see, frankly, the cause of the Palestinians set back. And it's really the cause of Israel. I mean, I think one thing this demonstrates, including the reaction to the reported hospital strike last night, is that, it's in Israel's interest to solve this problem, the Palestinian problem.
Well, for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, there are those of us who think that the quote pro-Israel voices actually have a tendency to work against that objective. That's another conversation.
Well, I mean, this is yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I have a few things.
There's another conversation. I'm just explaining why I hate for everyone's vision of the whole thing to get blurred by, first of all, the horrific attacks themselves, and secondly, the reaction of some number of Americans who are either ignorant or malicious or just lacking in judgment, or young or something, who don't represent nearly all of the supporters of the Palestinian cause, I would say.
Right. I think that's true. It's also true. Netanyahu, I mean, this is absolute stain on his legacy. I mean, his legacy is over. It's not good for him. This is, he has the rightward march in Israel is, played a huge hand in this. And I also think it's notable that Hamas, these attacks, they were concentrated on, these were like kibbutzim that were these were peaceniks. I mean, these were people, this was like this particular area, my understanding was that it was created as a sort of symbol of two-state solution. The kids who were at the concert, it was a concert for peace. I mean, this was like a very, very peacenik part of the world. And the fact that they attacked this group is just all the more, I wondered, it's crossed my mind, like, well, what would have happened if like Haredis had been targeted, if they had targeted the ultra-Orthodox somehow? I wonder what the sentiment would be. I mean, this is so, it's so egregious that it makes it hard to entertain the complexities. But I do think that, and it's more than just,
it doesn't serve the interests of the Palestinian people. You mentioned Netanyahu. I mean, it may serve the political interests of Hamas, because one thing it does is, at least for the time being, derail the Saudi-Israeli normalization, which would have steered a lot of money toward the Palestinian Authority, which is Hamas's big rival. So it serves the interests of Hamas, maybe. It may, but and in general, I would say, Hamas has served the interests of Bibi. And in fact, he's apparently on record a few years ago saying, we need to not let the Palestinian Authority get strong and let Hamas get stronger, something to that effect.
Yeah,
he recognized the political utility of Hamas.
I mean, his legacy is stained because this happened on his watch. I mean, it is astonishing that in a country with the defense, like a country with the Iron Dome, with this kind of defense infrastructure, that something like this could happen.
Yeah,
it's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. I mean, but there is I said like 15 years ago, I said to somebody, whenever, or maybe 12, like the extremists in Israel, like Bibi, and the extremists on the Palestinian side, like Hamas, are playing a non-zero-sum game. They're good for each other. They keep each other in power.
Yeah.
And things like this don't serve the interests of the Palestinian people or the Israeli people. And I mean, I don't think Bibi serves the interests of the Israeli people or Hamas or the Palestinian people, and so on. On that we agree. On that we agree. So I really didn't plan to spend this much time talking about this, and we've been talking for, if I'm looking at the clock accurately, close to an hour. And what we normally do at this point is,
oh my gosh,
I know, isn't it shocking how time flies when you're having fun?
This is the most I have to say about this subject. So you've wrung it out of me. This is in no way my area of expertise. So
yeah,
thank you for whatever you've revealed.
We can thank each other for whatever mistakes we've each made in the course of this that will ruin our careers. So at this point, generally, we're close to an hour. We go into overtime. That's a part of the conversation that's available to paid subscribers of the Non-Zero newsletter. I'm sure you sympathize with the idea of a paywall. You're no stranger to paywalls.
No, I'm all about them.
So you've been kind enough to say you'll stay and talk in a kind of overtime session. What should we say we'll talk about?
Well, I want to talk about the Unspeakeasy, and I would love to talk about it, not just for the paywall people, though, but if we're out of time, then
no, I'll give you your Unspeakeasy plug. In fact, I will graciously, having like coerced you into having a conversation that actually neither of us really wanted to have.
That's what they should pay extra for.
I will graciously yield. But first, I want to say one thing we can talk about in overtime is the super secret conference of global elites we were both at.
Oh, I don't think we're allowed to talk about that, but I guess we can talk about it in overtime.
We can talk about it in very general and vague terms.
Okay.
And I think basically everything said at the conference was off the record. So we shouldn't name names or anything.
Even if you say who didn't say it, even if you just subtweet it.
You could probably say somebody said this, but
many people said.
Yeah.
Many people are saying.
Some people are saying. Now that conference had a big anti-woke vibe. I don't know if you picked up on it.
More so than last time. Yes.
I was the least anti-woke person there probably. But and what else? What did I mention? Well, there's the TED thing. You had a guy on your podcast talking about how sports has gotten too woke. Maybe we could talk about that.
Oh, Ethan Strauss. Yeah.
Yeah. I like sports. And is there something else? We've already paid tribute to Mickey. So maybe we could dish some dirt on him in overtime.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And anything else? Okay, so I guess we can let you. Oh, I got it. This you will appreciate. I just want to know if you were aware of all these letters before we move to your public service announcement. I got an email today that made me think of it. It says, "Dear so-and-so," it's from the university I attended. It's to alumni. It says, "We hope you can attend the LGBTQIA plus."
Wait, LGB.
LGB. Did I say B?
That'd be new. What would that be?
No, what was new to me was the IA. Now, you're on top of these things, but LGBTQIA plus, there's a plus symbol. You already knew about the IA?
Oh, the IA is, I believe, is it intersex? And then the A is asexual or ace. And then the plus is whatever from there.
To be continued.
Yeah.
There may be more. The coalition may grow. Okay. So once again, I was behind the times. All the cool people knew about that.
You should go to that, though.
Oh, I've definitely reserved a seat. Yeah. So tell us about the Unspeakeasy. I really am fascinated by this idea. I think I should start having retreats where
retreats are great.
Where I, instead of you, I'm the subject of worship.
Yeah. No, I'm actually not the subject of worship. So the way I got the idea for this was, I obviously have been writing about these issues for a long time. I had a book about it. I've been doing podcasts. I teach writing classes, as I said, and they're not political at all. I just teach normal. It's usually memoir, essays, personal essays, nonfiction. It's usually women in my classes, not always, but I get a lot of women. And I noticed something in the last couple of years. They were coming into the class and they didn't even really care about the writing. Like, we would workshop their pages and they'd kind of be like, "Oh, I wrote that like 5 years ago. I just wanted to come to the class because I knew that this would be like a place where we could talk about things and I wouldn't be judged and like we could have an interesting conversation." And they started saying things like, "I was kicked out of my book club because I said the wrong thing," or "I didn't, somebody wanted to read Robin DiAngelo and I suggested we read something else. And then all of a sudden it was a pileup," or "this Facebook group imploded that I was in." And more, it was like they were not able to have normal conversations with their friends. Their friend groups were imploding. The pandemic had like really exacerbated this, although it was going on before then too. And I was hearing from men and women equally about this. Not equally, actually. A lot of women. Well, maybe I was hearing from them equally, but the stories from the women had a particular quality, which is that they were more likely when this happened to just stop talking because they didn't want to get excluded from their peer group. The social penalties for speaking up were so much more upsetting to them than for a lot of men. And so I was noticing this happening. And I was also noticing that, like, in a lot of the listener communities for these different podcasts, like Persuasion and The Fifth Column, and I love all these things, they were very male oriented. The guys would come onto the Zoom hangouts and be talking and all this. And the women, there would be like a few women and they weren't saying as much. And I thought, God, like, we need to have a heterodox community for women, because they were not talking. Like, they were literally, our voices were not in the conversation, with a few exceptions. Barry Weiss, obviously, there are, female podcasters, writers in this space.
That reminds me. I'll do my little Barry Weiss segment in the overtime. Thank you. Go ahead.
Even better. So women were really missing from this kind of free speech ecosystem. So I did an experiment. I took a bunch of us out to the desert, women representing different areas of interest, about 9 of us. It's about a year and a half ago. And we just had a free speech vacation, a sanity spa. And we talked for 3 days on different things. And I had different segments and I facilitated the discussions. And it was incredible. And so I thought we need to just keep doing this. So we have these retreats. We go different places. It's women of all different ages. It's small groups. It's usually capped at 15 to 18. We have women in their 20s. We've had women in their 80s. We've had, corporate lawyers, academics, small town librarians, stay-at-home moms. It totally runs the gamut. And it's really just an incredible way of A, realizing that you're not crazy, and B, learning actually how to have conversations so that you can go back out into the real world and know how to talk about these things. And it's been life-changing. I know I'm like sounding very hyperbolic in this conversation, and really here, it's not. I mean, it is, you come out of this feeling like, oh my gosh, there are people who want to have these conversations, and we talk about everything. I mean, and we've had some, I sat there one time and I just sat back, because often I don't actually talk that much. And there were 12 different women having a conversation about abortion. And there were 12 different opinions, all the way from, I think abortion should be available on demand, to, I think abortion should never be allowed. People had personal experiences that they were sharing. They were able to be very personal and emotional, but also intellectually honest and rigorous. And it happens again and again with all kinds of topics. And now we have an online community, which is totally private. People join. We have many forums of discussion. It goes on all day. And it's been incredible. So
they report like that they feel a little more assertive when they go back to the real world. Is part of the idea you're kind of getting them revved up to speak their mind in back in the real world?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is not that we sit around and complain for 4 days. I mean, that's any woman's vacation.
I would pay for that. If you ever do organize that retreat, I would pay.
Yeah. It's more like it's a reality check, right? Because I think people get caught up in their bubbles. I mean, we have a lot of people who live in very liberal communities, and they identify as very much on the left. And it's not all on the left. We definitely have we have conservatives, we have liberals. It's not a political organization at all. And I think they really start to doubt themselves, and they think, well, maybe I'm wrong about this. And this is a way of actually figuring out the ways in maybe which they are wrong, and the ways in which they're right. And it's usually something in between. I mean, we had a woman, this is fascinating. We had at one of our retreats, we had a woman who had been in a mass shooting a couple of decades ago. She's seriously injured. She still has repercussions from this injury. And she nonetheless has very libertarian ideas about guns. And so she gave a presentation where she talked about this. She told this whole story. She told about, what that had been like, and what it was like now, just in terms of her injury. But she's also proceeded to make a case, pretty strong case for gun rights, which a lot of people disagreed with. But it was nonetheless riveting. And we get that again and again.
So where, how do people sign up for this? How many of these do you have a year? You have one
Well,
a year?
I mean, I'm growing. So yeah, they go to the unspeakeasy.com. So we have three. We did 6 retreats this past year. This is only a year or so old.
But that's a lot. That's a lot.
It's
I
a
mean,
lot.
a physical gathering is like not nothing.
Yeah, and they're small though. So you should go on. I try to like get a sense of, who can talk. I'm careful about who comes. It's not like there's some huge gatekeeping mechanism, but I need to know who's there. It's all off the record. There's no social media. There's none of that. We have guest speakers. Katie Herzog came to be a guest speaker once. We have incredible people. So yeah, they should go to the unspeakeasy.com. We have the retreats for next year that I've announced are in Austin, Louisville, Kentucky, and Los Angeles. And we're gonna have I'm gonna announce probably 3 more for later in the year. But
Cool.
yeah.
Cool.
So
you should bring ayahuasca just for the hell of it. Do that.
I know that would take up. We're going to get into a conversation about gun rights while taking ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds good. I'm impressed. I do want to I do want you to be my life coach. I better hurry. But if I'm going to get a life coach.
Only 20-year-olds can be life coaches. Have you noticed that? All life coaches are like in their 20s.
I guess the irony of that has occurred to both of us, hasn't it?
Well, you would have to be in your 20s to think that you knew enough about life.
I guess it's not so ironic. So we're going to go into overtime. I want to say one more thing that I don't think you'll object to or feel you need to reply to. My own view is that the longer the Israeli retaliation goes on, the easier it's going to be to recruit the next round of terrorists, because the more people in Gaza will say they have siblings who were killed by Israel and so on. I think that's the way it works.
Yep.
So that's part of my motivation for not wanting, the speech from those who oppose massive retaliation to be discouraged. But that's just me. So with all that said, we're going to go into overtime now. You can, if you Google Substack and Non-Zero, you can find a place to be a paid subscriber. There are also unpaid subscribers. Nothing wrong with that. You get parts of the newsletter. And if you want to support, I think, unusual conversations like this, I don't think there's a lot of conversations exactly like the one we just had, then you can become a paid subscriber. And needless to say, you should also give Meghan all forms of payment for all that she demands for all parts of her
what did you call it? Industrial complex.
The Meghan-industrial complex.
Yeah.
But your podcasts are The Unspeakable and A Special Place in Hell.
Yes, and Meghan.substack.com,
and that,
where they can support the whatever. They can support me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or learn how to write, whatever. Okay, so now we are heading into overtime.